The problem becomes now that, well, I guess we've jumped ahead over kind of the lead. Vince is gone. He resigned. Well, how many things did he resign from?
The executive chairman of TKO. And
was he on a board of something?
Did he sell all of his shares? Yeah, he's the chair. He was the executive chairman of the board.
I don't think you can just sell that many shares. Just sell everything right now. I think that takes a while to gather up and liquidate, right? But he's officially not holding any position of, of not only of employment, but of ceremonially on boards or in any way with the company. Because as soon as this, what was it, like maybe 4 hours later after the news came out of the lawsuit, Slim Jim said, we are deciding to pause our promotional activity for the Royal Rumble the following day. And that had to be some fucking money because it's the number 2 pay-per-view and they were the big title sponsors. And what was it? Was it a half hour after that we got the news of Vince's resignation?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting how that happened. The day before, the Wall Street Journal article was published. The complaint started going around a little bit after that. Other news organizations started picking up the story. CNN was running with it all day. I saw it on CNBC as well. Vince put out a statement, or his side did, saying that it was all false and he was going to vigorously defend himself.
And well, it was all either false or distorted truths. There was that caveat in there.
Alternative facts. Yeah,
alternative facts.
But then TKO put out a statement and it was kind of the opposite tone. Vince McMahon is not in charge here. He's not running anything. And then as soon as the first sponsor, and it's a big one, they just announced, I think over the summer, like the biggest sponsorship deal ever with Slim Jim. When they announced they were pausing it, they did not wait. Vince was gone right away. And at this point, how could Vince have any friends on that board, or maybe friends isn't the right word, anyone who's sympathetic to him being there? It's now a complete liability for him to have anything to do with the company. You have to wonder if the name McMahon could be used anymore for this company.
Well, and they had to know as soon as that news came out, they already had to be talking because it was going to be a waterfall of sponsors dropping out if they hadn't made an announcement and if they, hadn't nipped it in the bud. So as soon as that news came out, I'm sure whoever needed to talk to whoever was talking to them. And they probably said, well, let's see if anything happened. And boom, something happened. And there you go. But they would have cost him a fortune. And like you said, I think, it might be good if Stephanie came back. Stephanie might be the McMahon. Well, but think about this. In hindsight, she has dodged Vince every chance she could for the last 2 years, right? She left. Then all of a sudden he had to leave, so she came back. And when he came back, she left again. And was Triple H, did he not at one point vote that maybe Vince shouldn't come back?
Vince, Stephanie, and Nick Khan, all 3 of them voted for him not to return. Vince had the power to override everyone.
Yeah, well, but so maybe she kind of was trying to do the right thing, or at least wasn't doing the wrong thing.
She's in a tough position. Triple H, and we could talk later on about what he said during the Royal Rumble press conference, or what he didn't say, or how he tried to address this or didn't address it, however you see it. Stephanie went on TV. If Stephanie, and again, we don't know who the unnamed executives in the complaint are, but if Stephanie's one of them, or if she, as a member of the board, was privy to the investigation and what its contents were, and if the investigation showed any of this, and we don't know if it did, because if they didn't speak to Janelle Grant or her attorney, it's kind of like the AEW investigation. It didn't speak to Lucy. It's not a real investigation then. But if their investigation showed any of this stuff, and Stephanie knew about it, and as an act that wasn't publicly known, did some things behind the scenes, including but not limited to walking back and leaving, coming back to help, leaving as soon as her dad came back, she still went on TV and led the audience in a "Thank you, Vince" chant. That's fucked up. That's
forgot
fucked
about
up.
that one.
There are stories, and I'll say this because enough of them are going around, we could talk about it, but we don't know how true they are. There are stories going around now that one of the reasons, or in part, maybe Shane McMahon had previously left WWE going back almost 20 years because of issues with his dad, because of his dad's behavior, and that Shane wasn't like that. And that Shane didn't want to do those things, whatever those things were at that time. And that Shane and his dad, because they were so different personality-wise, it's caused a lot of issues. And that's why Shane wasn't really a part or privy to any of this stuff, you would think. Although he did come back to the company, he wasn't an executive, he was just talent.
Well, yeah, and Shane is obviously more different now than Vince. Shane had a lot of similarities with Vince in that, the energy and the physical fitness, fanaticism and, the gung-ho business, blah, 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 good stuff. But I've said Shane is a nice guy, and he's got a nice wife and nice kids. And I'm not sure. The other explanation was also very plausible that Shane realized he wasn't going to be, because I don't think Shane's aptitude for the wrestling business was off the charts. Shane knew he wasn't going to be his dad in terms of running the company and went off to do his own thing. That's entirely plausible. I think at that point, I'm not saying Shane might not have known that, Vince was trying to, inappropriately integrate himself with other women or whatever. But I can't believe that Vince would have even tried to pitch any of that to Shane.
Could you believe that if either of his kids got wind of any of his behavior? Again, the behavior isn't just cheating. I
can believe, I guess, if I sit down him pitching this to Laurinaitis because he didn't give a shit. I don't think Vince would have wanted to disrupt his son's entire family life and whatever the fuck. And go ahead now and ask me what you were going to ask me.
Well, no, I mean, that kind of sums up a lot of it, but the family stuff's interesting because Triple H is still in charge. And based on the complaint, it appears that people knew something was going on in that office. They knew that Vince had a girl on payroll for one reason or another. Who knows how much anyone knew? Well, who knows what Vince shared with what people? Are we supposed to think that John Laurinaitis and his physical therapist are the two people he trusts the most in the world with this kind of stuff? How did that door open with him and Johnny Ace?
Jesus.
So we don't know. And, he's talking about this stuff with Brock. Is there anyone else he's trying to impress by showing photos of someone who didn't want their photos around there or talking about someone like this? We don't know any of this. The big thing is we don't know who knew what. The complaint has a lot of unnamed people. Was Kevin Dunn, who was, based on everything everyone always said before this, someone who was always there because of his relationship with Vince, because he knew how to work within Vince's system, that he was maybe the second most powerful person in the company at times. What did he know? John Laurinaitis was involved in this.
And let me say one thing here about Kevin Dunn. I'm not saying that he didn't know anything or didn't know anything or whatever, and I could believe either story. Probably I could believe more that he did know everything and was, he would never betray Vince, but I can pretty much guarantee you that he probably was not involved. I don't never had long personal conversations with Kevin Dunn, but I'm thinking he's like a fucking person who would live vicariously through stories, if anything.
And also the timeline of events. I mean, a lot of this takes place during the pandemic. Laurinaitis was all of a sudden made the head of talent relations again in 2021, remember? No one thought he would ever have that role again, or that he should. That was just based off things that people heard that wasn't this. And all of a sudden he was the head of talent relations again.